What is good, guys? It's Ray-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. And break down why we're going to likely see quite a bit of volatility going into tomorrow. Break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward and what's going on with other factors involving the markets. But before I begin the devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 7 free stocks. And the offer ends in just 12 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's break down what's happening with SPY. Looking at SPY, we got this slight looking bearish divergence that developed as we pushed this 531.5 area. I made a video about how we were going to likely see some tough resistance. I had said to watch and see if we end up losing support to confirm a little bit of a rejection. And we got that little rejection as we kind of talked about in my previous video. So after this happened, we need to see a follow through move to the downside for this to be a confirmation of more downside. So we'll just have to wait and see how things go. I do think SPY will test, some key supports, but we'll have to watch and see if buyers do end up coming back to defend because yes, the market could dip lower, but that does not mean it's just going to crash forever because the buyers are still present. The buyers just pushed us to all-time highs earlier today, so there is still potential for them to defend. So I'll break down more details about this a little bit later on, and I'll talk about the market and the charts for Nvidia and the others. But let's first talk about some data. What's happening for tomorrow? Today was Thursday, May 16th, by the way. And I just want to make it very clear that the initial jobless claims data came in very close to expectations. So this was actually very close, and that's why the market kind of pushed a little bit higher when this came out. So the whole economy is still, once again, not looking as bad as people thought it would look on paper, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're clear of anything else because a recession is still on the horizon, in my personal opinion. But despite that, looking at the data going into tomorrow, it's going to be very, very minor. We have very minor data. We just have Waller giving a speech, then some crude data. It's all very minor, won't really affect the market as much. What's going to affect the market a lot more is going to be this. We have an insane amount of options coming out for expiration for tomorrow. We have over 800,000 or close to 800,000 of these calls expiring tomorrow. And we also happen to have about well over 3.4 million of these puts expiring for a 4.37 puts to call ratio. The majority of people have puts expiring. The majority of them are puts, and that is going to be very, very impactful for the markets. Will we see the market continue to squeeze because of this, or is the market going to kind of dip a bit? So we'll see how things end up, performing moving forward. But on top of all of this, I wanted to call out something else that's important. We also have more data coming out. So for earnings, we have applied materials. That's going to be a little bit important. So we'll see how this affects the markets. And besides that, we have more things coming out for Friday. So it's all very, very minor, nothing too insane. We just had Walmart do relatively well for earnings, good guidance. But for the rest of earnings, it's going to be minor for the rest of the week. I'm not going to really talk too much about that for now. You guys could just look at the screenshot, but that's all I'm seeing for earnings. I'll talk more about them, especially as we approach next week. Now, for more data, right now the fear and greed index is currently at greed. The majority of people are still greedy, expecting the market to push more. They're getting excited. There's more euphoria, but we have to be very careful when people become too greedy because that's when some bears could start to step in. And we're starting to see that so far. Uh, I just want to make it very clear that the market is greedy for now. We are seeing some shifts here and there, and we'll have to see if anything else changes. Besides that, the puts and call options positioning is currently at extreme greed. The majority of positions are very greedy. We're seeing more and more of these puts being closed, more calls being bought. That's causing a big shift overall in the overall ratios. Market volatility is also neutral as we're approaching some key supports. So that's going to be very, very pivotal for the way that we're moving. And on top of all of this, I just want to call out that there are other changes as well in terms of junk bonds and such, but nothing is basically telling us the market's ready to reject yet. We're not getting true bearish signals quite yet. We're getting some potential signals that the market is kind of rejecting a bit, but nothing is telling us that the market is going to tank very, very hard. So please do not turn way too bearish or too, crazy over just like very, very minor things that we're seeing. So for now, the Dow futures are very, very unchanged so far, as the blue chips are still kind of holding some key levels. But things could shift going into tomorrow as we're seeing some signals suggesting a little dip could be coming. Even if we do dip, though, I have to be watching to see where buyers defend us at. So that being said, and without further ado, let's talk about these charts. SPY has resistance at this 529 area, 529.5 and 530. We have support currently at 528 as critical support. Losing this opens the door towards our 50 EMA, which is currently at 526.7, maybe a little bit higher by tomorrow, but that's what we're seeing on the chart for now. Now, if I pull up, for instance, the 4-hour time frame, we're also starting to contract a little bit, which could be suggesting more potential for downside. So I do think SPY may dip a little bit more, but we'll have to wait and see if we continue this move and if we end up breaking some key supports. Now, if we look at, for instance, the daily time frame on SPY as well, the daily is also showing signs of rejection, but I wouldn't solely trade based off that because the daily could be very deceptive sometimes. Whoopsies, the daily could be deceptive as it's used by these market makers institutions to try to trick retail. So, what's the best thing to go about tomorrow? What's the best way to do it? The answer is to be very patient and watch your key levels to really understand the way the price action is moving. That's the best thing I can really tell you. Going into tomorrow, there's a very good chance SPY is going to dip towards 528. I think we're going to be likely testing this. We'll have to see if we bounce off this or not. If the buyers defend right here, we could be looking for a pushback up to 530, then some sideways price action in this range temporarily before a bigger move. But if we lose 528, then I think we're going to be dipping all the way down to 526.6. So I'll look for a little bit more of a dip, but then watch and see if buyers defend or not. That's going to be pivotal for the way the market's moving. Why do I say that? Because remember, SPY hit a new all-time high today. The buyers are still alive. It's not like they just disappeared instantly. They're still going to try. So we're going to give this some time and see how things end up moving. But I do anticipate that the market is going to dip a little bit more, retest 528 flat, and watch to see if we get a bounce off of it or not for some sideways price action within our range. Or if we lose 528 and start dipping all the way down, that's going to be very, very key for the way that we are moving. So to be bullish, you want to see SPY break the all-time high again. I'm not seeing that as a very strong possibility for now. It looks more like we have a temporary top at 531.5, but we'll see just to be safe. And the most likely possibility is us dipping a bit more, rebounding, and maybe continuing to fall or holding up at above 528, depending on how it holds. Besides that, we have Tesla stock. The one and only Tesla is also trading kind of sideways right now. We have a very, very nice looking structure right here. I would say that Tesla has a possible head and shoulders like structure. We also have a gap all the way down here to fill at 168, but it also depends on the news and other factors. So if the head and shoulders is a fact, okay, I want to make it very, very clear that things right here are very, very important for Tesla because Tesla's been seeing a lot of negative news, a lot of negative headlines. So news will affect us to some extent alongside other factors. But we have a head and shoulders. We have a left shoulder here. We have a head and then a right shoulder. If we end up dipping, watch 172 as critical support. Losing this would open the doors for 168 and a gap fill all the way down here. And breaking through this would help us actually push much higher towards 178 plus. Overall, with this head and shoulders, I would say that Tesla's looking a little bit more bearish. So it does favor a little bit of a rejection or retest of 172, but just to be safe, we'll watch for confirmation. So we'll see, does the head and shoulders play out? Is Tesla about to see a dip back down to 168 if we lose 172? Or is this a trap and is Tesla about to break much higher? The pattern does suggest downside's a possibility, and also Tesla closed very flat today, really struggled to break out. So I'm kind of in the middle. I'm going to just wait and see what happens tomorrow morning. So we'll be very patient on this one just to be safe. For Bitcoin, Bitcoin is kind of dipping a little bit. We're retesting our 20 EMA at 65,500. We could go we could go a little bit higher towards 65,900, but if we get a rejection there, I'll be looking for a retest of our 50 EMA at 64,700. So a little pop and drop like move is a strong possibility for now. For Nvidia is also kind of sinking, but it's actually below its 944 support. So it's showing a little bit of weakness. I think that Nvidia could retest 944 in the morning tomorrow, but then we'll watch if we get a rejection. If we get the rejection, we could be dipping down to the lower 930s to retest our 50 EMA. And if we break past this resistance, we'll be pushing higher. In my video yesterday, I called out 960 on Nvidia. We came just short, hitting 958 during the pre-market, so it came very close. Now it looks to me like we're going to get a retest of 944 and see if we get a rejection or not. We might reject and actually dip a little bit lower since technicals are showing some contraction. So that is something else that's worth noting. Another thing I want to note is the fact that when you look at the 4-hour time frame on Nvidia, what you'll see is that we've basically retested this symmetrical structure like this. So you guys can see right here, the last time we hit this 960 area, we got a little rejection. The same thing's happening again right here. So the chart is showing a little bit of weakness at this key supply zone. On top of all of this, we also have the one and only QQQ. The triple Q is looking very interesting in my opinion as well. We have this resistance around this 454 area. We have support currently at 452. If we lose that, we'll be dipping all the way down to this imbalance towards 450. So in my personal opinion, I think that we're kind of turning on the 4-hour time frame. There's a little bit of weakness on the chart. And then when we look at the hourly time frame, it's very similar to Nvidia. So I think it's going to retest this 20 EMA, the 452 zone, and we'll have to see if we get a rejection or not. I think it's going to pop a little bit. If we get that rejection, I'll be anticipating about 450. If we don't get the rejection, we could actually rebound to try to fill this imbalance, and we'll try to make our way back up to 453. So I see it basically retesting 452 to 453, this range right here. If we get this little rejection, I could see it dipping back down to 450. So watch and see if we get that rejection. That's going to be confirmation for the bigger move, and we'll see what happens after that. And finally, out of the main five I typically talk about, we have Apple stock. Apple is very sideways, guys. If we break past 190.5, we could break out higher. And if we reject here, we're going to be dipping down towards 189. If we lose that, we're dipping to 188 towards our 50 EMA. So what's interesting is we have a bearish divergence. We're just kind of stuck in this range, but we're really struggling to break past 190. So there is a dip that there's a chance that Apple could dip a little bit towards 189 again, but it might get bought back up once we hit that level. So we have to watch and see how things move from there. But there's a strong possibility it might actually dip a little bit. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. So with that being said, that is it for the main five. Let's talk about a couple more now. I'm going to be a little bit more blunt, a little quicker with the analysis for the rest of these. For Neo is not looking that great. We got this big red bar over here because of the buy the rumor, sell the news event with the Onvo L60 launch. So that's going to be very important. With this potentially dipping, we have a gap to fill all the way down here. That's going to be at this 5.09 area. If we lose the support, we're going to be looking for a dip. And then we also have resistance all the way up here at our 50 EMA. So I wouldn't be surprised if Neo kind of retests the 50 EMA, 5.3 to 5.4. Then we start dipping down to fill this gap. That's a very, very strong possibility. On top of all of this, Palantir is also trading sideways. We do have a bullish wedge-like structure, so it's actually looking decent overall. But the issue with this wedge is that it's not really breaking out strongly. We have a 21.88 as resistance. We have 21.5 as support. If we lose that, we're going to be dipping all the way back down towards 21.16. So if we end up losing support, look for a little dip. And if we hold this, we could try to break out. I think it's possible that there's an accumulation structure right over here and it might actually try to push up higher. So I think it's going to be testing 22 again, just trade sideways for now, but there is potential for it to try to bounce. As of right now, I do anticipate some sideways price action. For super micro, this is looking a bit more bearish right now. It did push all the way up to about 975. We did call out potentially going up to about 980. I did have that as a target. And then I talked about how we might see a little reaction based off what happens. So we got a little rejection, and now we're retesting our 20 EMA. I think it might retest 916 if we reject here. We're dipping all the way down to 884. If it breaks through this, it could push higher, but this is looking like it's starting to reject off a bearish divergence. Look for a little pop and drop like move. And we might be retesting 900 and 884 all over again. For Rivian, Rivian's looking a little bit weak. We got a nice head and shoulders like structure is actually dipping off of that. And I think we might just kind of see some consolidation right now. So look for a retest of 10.28 and a move back down to shuffle at our 200 EMA around the 10 area. And I think it's just going to shuffle a bit, maybe dip a bit, and then continue to shuffle from there. We have a head and shoulders like structure on SoFi. It's looking a little bit more bearish. I could be looking for a little dip towards 7.1. Might retest 7.18, then come back down towards 7. So I do see a risk of this dipping a little bit more. And then for the IWM Russell 2000, we have 207 as our support. If we end up, I'm going to be watching this previous resistance becoming support because we called out this level yesterday. If we got the rejection of the IWM, that was a very important level, this 207 zone. So if we lose 207, I'm going to be looking for a bigger dip all the way down towards 206 or below that. And if we manage to hold this, we're going to be bouncing back up to 210. I have a feeling that this is going to dip a bit, so it might retest 208 in the morning and make its way down to 207, then eventually start sinking down to like 205 or all these low levels. There's 206, 205, and then the gap fill all the way down to those levels. So I do anticipate a little pop and drop like move on the IWM Russell 2000. I think that's very, very probable. For AMD, we're holding up relatively decently at our 20 EMA. We could actually rebound a bit towards 164, and then we could be making our way back down. If we lose our 20 EMA, we're going to be dipping down to about 159. Might pop a bit and make its way back down, but I do see that as a strong possibility. So be very, very careful. For ARM, we're actually kind of trading sideways right direction, a bit of a downtrend. We had this high here, came down, the lower high came down. So we're slowly making our way down towards lower levels. If we pull up our 4-hour time frame, I want to actually pull this up real quick. The 4 hour is kind of showing a little bit more weakness right here. So I think that it might actually retest 113 flats, then 111. I think those areas may be tested, and we'll see if we get a break from like a nice little flag that could be forming. So I think it might dip a little bit towards 111, and we'll see if we get a big bounce. I'll be watching that very carefully. Now, Coinbase had some negative news. That's why we got a big dip. We're looking a little bit more bearish. So I do think that we're going to be testing 200. If we bounce off this, look at 205 as resistance. If we lose 200, we're going to be dipping all the way down towards 192. So I favor a little pop and drop like move and move all the way down towards 192. For Amazon, Amazon is actually dipping a little bit more. Looks a little bit weak right now. I'm going to be looking at 183 as support. We have resistance at 185. May pop a little bit to make its way back down lower. So I do anticipate it's going to be dipping all the way down towards 183. And if it loses that, I think 180 is likely coming. So Amazon's looking a little bit more bearish to me relative to the market. For Meta, Meta came down exactly as predicted to 472. We called this level out intraday. If we lose this, we'll be looking at 468 and eventually 465. If we bounce off this, we'll be looking at 478. This to me looks a little bit more bearish, so it does favor 468, but it depends if we lose our 200 EMA or not on the 4-hour time frame. This does favor that somewhat more. For Microsoft, we're actually holding up very well. It's very, very resilient, but it could get a little dip before it tries to bounce. We're on a very, very nice uptrend. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually come down towards 417, then bounce off that and start pushing higher. So it could still be bullish, but despite being bullish, it might dip a little bit first and then bounce later. So I think it might be testing 417, then bounce. For Google, Google's approaching resistance right here at this, basically the 176 area. We also have resistance at 177, and our support happens to be right here at 173. Looking at Google, depends if we could hold 175. If we lose this, we're going to be testing 173 again. If we hold this, we're going to be bouncing higher. My guts tells me 173 is going to come to a bounce after that. So a little drop and bounce for the markets. How is GameStop looking? I called out 25. We actually came very close to that level. I think that GameStop might just kind of shuffle between 32 and 25 for some time. So look for a little bounce tomorrow, then a continuation down lower. But I think that the overall trend is still bearish for GameStop. For AMC, we have resistance at 5.18 and also 4.41. I think that we might be retesting 4.41 and just trading sideways. I'm not really seeing a whole lot right now as the trend is more bearish. I got some requests for DJT. DJT right now is looking a little bit bearish. I could be looking for a move back down towards 51.4, but it's very stationary. It's been trading sideways in this nice little wedge right here. So I could be looking for a little dip towards 51.5 in the lower 50s, and a move back to up, and then just lots of sideways price action. Not really a whole lot is going on with it, but there could be a dip later. For the VIX is also in a very, very critical area. If we look at the VIX, we're at an extreme right now. Look at the white line at the very bottom. We love to bounce off this 12.4 area, and we have a tendency of doing this every single time it happens. We'll be watching to see if we get that bounce. I'll be looking at resistance at 12.94, followed by 13.36. Watch to see if the bounce breaks above 12.4. If we get a rejection, we're just waiting very, very patiently. So every time this does happen, the market does have a tendency of topping. So we'll wait and see if the top is in for the markets and if the market's about to get a rejection or not. The 10-year Treasury yield came down, and it kind of bounced a bit after the Fed speaker spoke today. So we'll see if we get a little bounce on this and it comes up to fill this gap, or if it gets a big rejection. As of right now, the inflationary data was decent, so the Fed is de-incentivized to be more hawkish, which is why the 10-year ended up dropping. That helped the market prop up higher. So we'll see what happens with this yield. And then for the dollar, I think that we're going to be approaching our 20 EMA, so it might go a little bit higher. It might go a little bit higher. There's 104.69, and then we'll see what happens after that, because we did drop to fill this imbalance. Now we're at support. We held support at 104, so look for a little bit bounce towards the 20 EMA, and we'll see what happens after that. This means the market may dip a little bit more. So with that being said, guys, I think SPY may dip a little bit more. I'm going to be very, very blunt with you guys. Might be a little bit of a drop coming to about 528. And then we'll see if we get a bounce or not after that. If we do get a bounce, then hey, buyers will return. But as of right now, I do see a dip coming to 528. And if we lose that 526.6 is coming on SPY, look for a little dip and see if buyers defend or not. But for now, be prepared for that. Okay. But remember, guys, do not be overly bearish. Don't turn into a mega bear out of nowhere. Just know we may dip a bit, but be prepared, because those buyers are still very relentless and they'll try to fight back. All right, guys, thank you for listening. Have a great day. I'll see you guys in just, by tomorrow morning before the market opens. And until then, I thank you for listening. I really appreciate every single one of you, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you and peace out.